Shut up! I'm a hardworking contractor, 63 years old. For the last 35 years of my life, I've spent reading. Most of us realize the world's on fire, and it's not the fire of the Holy Spirit. It's the fire of hell. And I'm trying to offer some insights of what it takes to be a true man, not Andrew Tate version of a man. My name is Paul List. I'm your mentor.
Tammy Peterson, Jordan Peterson, Candace Owens. Are they all going to convert?
Obviously, Tammy Peterson already did. Candace Owens did.
What's the significance of all that?
People are waking up to the fact that there's really two very clear sides in this battle against good and evil, and they're realizing even though that we have a corrupt hierarchy and a captured papacy, who's more of a globalist than a pope, they're waking up to the fact that there is one true church, and that's the side that they want to be on. The only alternative is the side of evil. Eventually, Jordan Peterson will come around to that conclusion too, but it's going to be more of an intellectual process for him.
Jordan Peterson said that he lives on the outskirts of things.
He can do that with anything but the truth. The truth is the singularity that he cannot orbit around very long unless he's completely dishonest with himself. And he's not dishonest with himself, so it'll eventually pull him in and he'll enjoy it. And he'll be happy that he did. But he can't live on the periphery of the truth without deceiving himself. And he's never been one to be intellectually dishonest. And his own honesty will bring him to the truth.
We got to keep these conversations going.
There's at least two ways that people come to the truth, either through the heart or through the head. Sometimes it's a combination. I think Jordan Peterson is primarily led by his head, although he does have a big heart. He's got a heart that's aware of beauty. Aesthetics is something that he definitely feels. You can tell when he talks about important things that are meaningful to him, he often gets emotional, chokes up. I know the feeling because I appreciate beauty. He appreciates beauty too. The more that he understands the reality of the Catholic faith and what it truly is, the divine institution established by Jesus Christ himself, God having become man, to join in that relationship. We were created for a relationship. That's how we were made in the image of God, for relationship with God. God became one of us and showed us how much he loved us with his sacrifice on the cross, because he can't force love out of us, but by showing us how much he loves us, we can therefore understand and return that love. And Jordan Peterson's going to come around to that. I think that he's got some, maybe some self-inflicted, more or less, you might say, self-inflicted academic stumbling blocks in his way, because academia is very secular these days, very even atheistic. And although he's none of those things, he's still influenced by those things. So eventually he'll come around to the truth when he exposes himself to things like St. Thomas Aquinas and the scholastics.
He said that he doesn't think anything is holding him back. You know, what do you think? What do you think that if nothing's really holding him back, do you think that relationship aspect you just mentioned is what he needs to understand better?
Yeah, I think we all need to understand that better. I think he also, I think I recall him saying that to fully embrace the reality of Christ and the Christian faith, the Catholic faith, it would be a tremendous cost. And of course it is. It is a tremendous cost. It requires us to relinquish many, many, many things that are unworthy of that faith, unworthy of that reality. And it is costly, and we will be persecuted, and he will be persecuted. Candace Owens will be persecuted. Tammy Peterson will be persecuted. Persecution comes in many forms these days. It's a soft persecution in the form of cancellation and ridicule and trolling and overlooked for opportunities because of your opinions on certain faith issues, moral issues that don't align with the modern idea of acceptance and this whole woke ideology. But those are the things that he'll easily pay. He'll pay those costs without any problem. And then he'll also start to realize, too, the things that he gains from his conversion, and those things will far outweigh any of the trivial little costs.
To me, it's like God is screaming at Jordan Peterson to convert. And it's like when he says things like he lives on the outskirts of things and, oh, I don't think anything's holding me back. If you saw the interview, he was very shy of the question. It's like he seemed like he almost knew it was wrong of him to answer that way with such little information given.
I didn't see the interview you talk of, but when the only thing that would hold him back would be some interior hesitation, and those interior hesitations can have a lot of complex origins. Some people just don't like to. They don't want to join. Some people just aren't. They feel like I'm not a joiner, and I don't want to just go along, because so many other people are doing it. There's a lot of reasons for that. We have this often very warped idea of independence, and we want to somehow hang on to our autonomy, our independence, and somehow that makes us stronger if we're not part of, quote unquote, a group. But there's nothing further from the truth. You actually make yourself weaker when you continually deny the reality of the truth, and you keep putting it at arm's length, and you put yourself in a weakened position. I just come to mind that phrase that was very popular, and it probably still is very popular. I believe in God, but I don't believe in organized religion. And, people use that as a kind of trying to use have their cake and eat it too. They want to, oh yes, I believe in God, and me and God, baby, we're all the way. But that organization, no, that's all a bunch of men, and that's all corrupted and whatever. Well, the reality is, without order, that's the nature of an organization. And without order, there's no being, there's no substance. So when people say, for instance, I believe in God, but I don't believe in organized religion, well, what you've really said is you really don't believe in God either. You don't believe in any order that God has instituted, any order, any being here on earth representing and functioning and operational in the material realm. Because it's recognizable, it is ordered. It obviously has to have order or we wouldn't recognize it. We can't recognize anything as a thing without order. So it's just an oxymoron to say that, I believe in God and I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in organized religion. You don't believe in God if you don't believe in organized religion.
I don't think, Jordan Peterson said that Catholicism is as sane as a person can get.
Yeah, I think Carl Jung said that. I think Carl Jung also quoted when he said that he said about confession, he said about the profession of psychology, and psychology is the study of the soul. He said if these people just went, speaking of his clients and people that seek psychological assistance and healing, he said if these people just went to their priests, we'd be out of business.
Wow.
And it's so true. And it's really, really unfortunate that people don't take advantage, Catholics don't take advantage of the sacrament of confession, because it is so healing to the soul, and the soul is the psychology is the soul. It's not just about the mechanical minds that we can alter with chemicals and medications and things of this sort. It's much, 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 much more than that. That's just, not that those things don't have a place, don't have value in certain instances, but they can't replace the real medicine, which is the truth, that really heals the soul.
When Jordan Peterson, talks about his wife's conversion, Tammy Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
There was an interview he did. I'm all the things I've quoted essentially are from this one interview.
Okay.
When he was pressed about his wife's conversion and if he would convert, it sounded just so shallow. Like he was he knew what he was saying was wrong, or what he was saying about his own conversion and his wife's conversion. He said it's ridiculously amazing, is what he said, or something along those lines, that his wife converted. because she's becoming more of her authentic self.
Right.
And I get what he's saying, but growing up in, public Catholic schools in Canada, I heard this so often. All Catholicism, all Jesus was about was just be true to yourself. You got to express your identity. Jesus calls us to be fully ourselves, and it just sounded similar to that, and it sounded shallow. Like Peterson knew he should have just said something, I don't know, more depth. Like, you know what I mean?
I think there's probably, again, there's that hesitation and that self-inflicted putting something that you're afraid of at arm's length. Then again, comes back to that inner fear that he knows is going to be costly. He knows it'll be costly because it's very serious. If it wasn't going to cost anything, it wouldn't be serious.
What do you think what do you think Jordan Peterson's, what do you think it's, that relationship, what do you think that's going to entail for him?
Well, he's admitted that it brought out the best portions and made his wife better, according to what you've quoted in that interview. So he obviously sees what it's done for her. So he can obviously transfer that same reality to his own situation and how it'll bring about his own capacity to be more fully himself. And then he's a smart guy. He'll figure out what that will also do for their relationship. Because that relationship, that love between them, as the Holy Spirit is the living love between the Father and the Son, that love between them will explode. And this whole notion of be yourself, be the true version of yourself. Well, that means following Christ, not following yourself.
Yeah.
You follow Christ. You'll be the best version of yourself when you follow Christ. When you fall, you take the medicine. The church is all about the spiritual medicine. The sacraments are the spiritual medicine. And we get up and dust ourselves off and try again. Always trying to improve ourselves. See, the thing about this whole notion of be yourself, be true to yourself, be the best, yourself. You can't raise yourself up any more than you can grab yourself by your belt and pull yourself up into the clouds. It's impossible. You can't do that. You're not your own. You can't lift yourself into a realm that's already beyond yourself. That's pretty obvious, and that's pretty obvious to anybody that thinks about it. So if the whole idea of be the best version and just do the best, do your thing and you be you. Well, you truly being you is acknowledging the fact that you're a creature of God, made for a relationship with God. God shows us how much he loves us from the cross, institutes the church, the Catholic Church, gives us the sacraments as our medication that we need here in this fallen world to bring ourselves higher, allow ourselves to be brought higher and higher by his grace, not by our grace. I don't have any grace to make myself any better than I am. I have the capacity to pollute myself. I have the capacity to drag myself down further. I can degrade myself and make myself lower than an animal, which a lot of people are in the process of doing. But I have no power that I can actually lift myself beyond my fallen nature. I need God to do that. I need the church to do that. I need the sacraments to do that. I don't think it's going to take very long before Jordan Peterson understands that. I think he does understand it. I just don't think he's ready to embrace it for many reasons. I think that if he weren't such a large public figure, I think he probably already would have converted.
You think he's afraid of consequences? What, persecution?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Jordan's afraid of much as far as that goes. He's
been
perfectly willing
enough.
he's perfectly willing to speak his mind. I think it's more personal than that. I think there's just some hesitations that he hasn't had maybe it's the inspiration. Maybe he hasn't had the inspiration to take that step. I think his wife is a big inspiration, and I think maybe that's the inspiration that'll eventually grow on him. And also the fact that, as the old saying goes, the man is the head of the family, but the woman is the neck. Mm-hmm. And I love that saying because the neck directs where the head goes. And eventually, I think with the neck, that's committed herself to the reality and the beauty of the Catholic Church, will eventually and inevitably turn the head in that direction, and the head in that family is Jordan.
I mean, his wife was miraculously healed from
Yeah,
cancer.
absolutely.
And is that not enough inspiration for the guy?
Well, I think it probably is. And, we live in a timely existence. We don't have angelic intellects as strong as many intellects are, including Jordan Peterson's intellect is obviously very strong. But he doesn't have an angelic intellect, and he lives in a timely world. And those realizations, even if he realizes it intellectually now, there's more to the human psychology that motivates and moves the will than just the intellect. The intellect's end is the true. The will's end is the good. And the good and the true we can pollute ourselves, and we can pollute ourselves with all kinds of apparent goods that aren't goods at all. They're actually evils. We see that all the time. And we're misled, and we're convinced that we're supposed to defile ourselves and fornicate and all these things in the name of, it's natural and it's good for you and it's healthy, and it's not. It just turns the fire up in our soul and makes us more and more degraded. That's an apparent good. It's not a good. A real good is something that's good for our eternity. It may even be painful, and often it is painful and inconvenient in this realm, but it's for the best, and it's for the real good, which is the eternal good. And if we only see things in a temporary, perishable realm, this realm of the material, and this is the only place we see our goods, then 9 times out of 10, we're going to pick an apparent good, and it's not going to be a real good. The real good primarily has to include, essentially it has to be for our eternity, not just for this temporal, 90 or 60, 70, 90 years, or, whatever, our existence here in this realm. And so it's easy to deceive ourselves into picking an apparent good, and a lot of people do that. And a lot of people lead other people down that slippery slope into hell in the apparent goods rather than the eternal good. And then it's easy also to pollute ourselves and deceive ourselves in the realm of truth, and that, or the realm of that's the good for the will. The true is the end of the intellect, and we can also pollute ourselves in that direction too, and confuse ourselves with a lot of word salad and a lot of circular logic, and excusing ourselves in order to postpone the real good for a temporal good, which will align with our will, and an apparent good, which leads us down the wrong road. I think that there's a lot of factors in there. I think that Jordan Peterson, I think his intellect is probably, if I had to guess, his intellect is probably 90% convinced. I think that his will still has a way to go. I think that it'll come around. Otherwise, he's going to get tired of pretending. He's going to get tired of delaying the inevitable. And I think eventually he'll realize that the longer he delays, the more he looks like he's a coward. And he's not a coward. He's not a coward at all. But this is a very, very, very serious decision. The biggest decision the greatest decision, the biggest decision that he could make in his life. So it's not taken lightly.
How would you separate and explain the conversion of the heart and the conversion of the intellect?
Well, metaphorically speaking, because the heart we say the heart. We say the heart to indicate another aspect of the mind, another aspect of the soul, obviously, because the heart doesn't do any thinking. The heart pumps blood.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so let's get that straight. So it's not really the physical organ that pumps blood. The heart in this, what we're talking about, is that portion of the intellect that is in tune with, it's the concupiscibles. It's the things where we find hope and joy and love and these things. So the thing about that realm, we don't have the vocabulary as precise because there's so many feelings involved in the heart too. That's why we call it the heart. It's by nature, it's ambiguous. The terminology isn't as precise as it is for the intellectual pursuits. The intellectual pursuits have a very precise vocabulary. The lexicon of the intellectual realm, by its nature, has a vast quantity of words that represent concepts. There's as Aristotle pointed out, there are things, concepts, and words, and that's the order that we communicate. The thing, then the concepts, and then we put that into words. There are a vast wealth of things and concepts that we put into words when it comes to our intellectual gymnastics, our intellectual capacity to truly flesh out concepts and ideas. There aren't as many when it comes to the heart, because the heart is typically so dominated by our feelings, and our emotions are a response of our intellect, of our knowledge. Sometimes it's a false knowledge. Sometimes it's even a lie that we have feelings for. But the emotions, this whole concept that people love to use this term, well, he or she is very emotionally intelligent. There's no such thing as emotional intelligence. That the emotions don't think. The emotions are a consequence of our intellect, of our situation that are in. They're a consequence of those things that we either understand or don't understand. They're not an active participant in the intellectual process. Our feelings aren't. They're a consequence of. So let's just put that in its proper place.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't have in that heart realm, like I said, it's a lot foggier. It's a lot less clear. It's a lot less formulated. It's a lot more difficult to actually get at the concept, because the concept by nature in the heart it's foggy. It's indistinct. It moves. It's emotion, out of motion. So it's difficult to pin that down. So being converted by the heart, I mean, let's face it, typically women are more in tune with the emotional reality. And the emotions are a reality. They're just not an intellect. Mm-hmm. But they're in tune with the emotional reality. Therefore, they are more sensitive to, and they have a tendency to have a much wider net, we'll say, in a social situation, but they won't have a nearly as distinct net. The intellect has a very distinct net, but it's not nearly as seemingly all-encompassing as the fog. I'll just call it as the fog of the emotional realm. The fog of the emotional realm just covers the whole landscape.
What do like when people talk the conversion of the heart, and I'm using that term again, understanding the definitions you've just provided, but nevertheless, we can still call it that. Mm-hmm. Things like prayer, mm-hmm. and spiritual reading, things like that can really, afflict the emotions, and bring about that conversion. And I think that's vital and important to be fully converted.
I think so too, because as I said, the emotions are a response to our intellect, what we know, what we understand. Therefore, as Aquinas made very clear, love is a knowledge. Love is a knowledge. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, very often, it's also accompanied by a feeling. So,
Would you say, sorry, let me cut you off.
Go ahead.
Would you say that when someone experiences, like a joy, mm-hmm. the joy of the Holy Spirit in prayer, mm-hmm. or a form of, charismatic prayer, would you say that is a love of that knowledge, the knowledge that they know in that is the emotion, is the experience? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think so, but
is that wrong, or is that
no? Because there's also God's grace that transcends, supersedes the intellect. I've had a long time ago. I mean, I remember I had an ecstasy, an absolute an absolute ecstasy, and it was a grace from God. And I had just came home from Mass. I was about 11 years old, and I was standing in the sunlight in the window, and I just had an absolute ecstasy. I couldn't explain it. I'd never felt so much overcome and overwhelmed with so much joy and peace and love, and it was just perfection. I'd never experienced anything like that. Had that come out of, was that purely something that came out of an intellectual knowledge? No,
No,
that was a grace.
Yeah.
And that didn't come from me either. That was grace. And it was beyond. It transcended this reality.
I think a lot of people that experience similar moments of conversion, like miracles, like Tammy, I'm not going to use her as an example because I don't know what she experienced or felt or whatever. But I think a lot of people attribute exactly what you described as, love is a knowledge. Okay, so so what I love is I know that I had those experiences, and therefore I know that I love God. I love my faith,
right,
because of those experiences. And I think maybe that's as far as some people can go. Would you not? Would you disagree with that?
I would. I hesitate to say that's as far as people can go. I think much more likely it's as far as people are willing to go.
Yeah.
They don't see. I think particularly in the evangelical world of where the emotional experience of faith is really so prominent. And so
on the experience
side is so prominent. Yeah. People don't often, they almost see trying to understand as an insult to God. And it's not. We're given a rational, bless you, we're given a rational soul for a relationship with God. God wants us to find him. God wants us to understand him. I believe that the ultimate act of love that we can give back to God in our current state in this temporal perishable realm, the ultimate expression of our love is looking for him, honestly, openly looking for him, and opening our hearts and our mind and studying and trying to understand God to the fullest that we're capable of. It's going to fall infinitely short of what God actually is, but I think we express and show our love to God when we really try and make the effort to understand who he is, because the more we understand who he is, the better we can develop that relationship, the better we can follow through, the more we can understand that love, and that love grows. And so the more, the better that we know him, and love being a knowledge, our love for him grows. And that's what we have to do. And that's the type of love that's, I'm going to say, is bulletproof. It's beyond reproach. It's beyond, it's untouchable. No matter what happens to you in the world, all the persecution, all the sickness, all the unfairness, injustice, all the misery and suffering of the world, that love cannot be touched. That love is beyond this world. And it's that treasure that we store up in heaven that Christ talked about, that can never rust, it can never perish, it can never be taken away. It's completely solid, it's completely sound. The more we develop that, and the more we develop a life that's centered and built on that foundation, the more firm and stable and safe our whole existence is. And we take that whole existence now, from now and forever, past this world, into the next, into heaven.
Well, I hope Jordan Peterson watches this. I think he's concluded a lot of, and probably thought of a lot of the things we've just talked about.
I do too. He's got an incredible influence, a good, mostly positive influence on people. I say mostly because I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard, I don't watch too much of this stuff, but I don't think I've ever heard anything that I thought was, whoa, that's really,
wrong.
That's really wrong. That's, I've heard a lot of influential people make a lot of those comments that were like, whoa, that's out left field. That's dangerous. Yeah. I never heard anything like that out of him.
Well, we should pray for him.
I have.
Continue.
I will. Sure.
Likewise.
And for the souls that he can influence. I mean,
Exactly.
we have a great responsibility when we have a great influence over many souls, and that's why the prelates, the bishops, and the priests obviously have a much greater responsibility for their behavior and their actions in this realm because they have so many souls that they're responsible for. I'm not saying it's the same, but it's a similar reality that the more people that we intend to influence, we better make sure that we're influencing them for the best, for the true good, for the truth, rather than just to further our influence and to further our wealth. And take a person like this Andrew Tate character, he influences a lot of young men, and almost completely for all the wrong reasons. And in his earthly, false vision, ignorant vision of manhood, he's leading a lot of souls into hell. Thank you for watching. We're here to try to help you avoid hell and achieve heaven. Please read our book, Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. If you're a Tolkien fan, this is Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed, where Tolkien reveals everything about his mythology, and we need to understand this now. Hell is grabbing for you. Heaven reaches down his hand and offers you the hand. This book helps you take the hand of God.